What if I told you that to be even considered for one of these watches, you have to had already spent upwards of $1 million at the store? To start, you'd probably call me crazy, but for all the timepieces I'm about to dive deep into, this is exactly the case. In a world where luxury watches are taking over, some pieces have hype and demand that will forever exceed the supply, making them some of the hardest objects to get your hands on in the entire world. Throughout this video, I'm going to show you exactly what makes these watches so hard to get and explain exactly why they are so expensive at retail and even more expensive on the secondary market. Without further ado, let's get into the video. If you're a big Rolex fan like myself, you've probably heard of the secret catalog of insanely valuable pieces called the off-catalog models. This secret and hidden collection of timepieces features insanely exclusive watches only available to the top spenders and most trusted clients at a Rolex authorized dealer. When we think of off-catalog Rolex, the Le Mans Daytona, Gemset Yachtmaster, and iced out Skydweller worn by Drake himself all come to mind. These pieces are often decked out in diamonds and precious metals and are the flashiest watches that Rolex makes, which is why they go for so much on the secondary market. Every single watch enthusiast would love nothing more than to get their hands on one of these insanely valuable pieces, but what makes them so hard to get? Something that isn't hard to do is to subscribe so you never miss one of my videos. But to start, these watches are not on the already complicated waitlist system that Rolex uses for their other watches. Instead, they have their own, even more complicated system, where the buyer actually has to apply to even get the chance of purchasing one of these watches. The client has to have at least over $400,000 spent on just Rolex watches, and sometimes even more if you're in a competitive city like Los Angeles or New York. However, once you achieve that, the authorized dealer will evaluate you and see if you're trustworthy and won't instantly sell the off-catalog piece for hundreds of thousands of dollars more than you bought it for. After that, the AD will send in an application for you, which means that after all that, you're not even guaranteed to be offered an off-catalog piece. This is one of the craziest allocation systems in the watch world, which has caused many big spenders to get really upset with Rolex over the years, and for the right reasons. These watches are worth more than houses in most cases, and because of that, the process of attaining one needs to be pretty hefty. Because of the insane spend history required, an application system to be even considered for one of these watches, it's safe to say that off-catalog Rolexes can be some of the hardest watches to get from retail in the entire world. But what if I told you that it only got crazier from here? Because the next watch is not just hard to get, it's one of the most expensive watches you can get from retail. This piece is none other than the Richard Mille 6702. It's not just the most in-demand Richard Mille, it's arguably the most desired watch in the entire world. Because it screams billionaire status and power, and every crypto and tech mogul is fighting to get their hands on one of these. Because of the already insane retail price of over $300,000, these pieces go for over $100,000 more than retail, sometimes going much higher than that depending on the model. The watch is featured in an all-carbon TPT case, meaning that it will never look used or get any scratches whatsoever. To be even considered for a piece like this, you have to prove that you're worthy of being on Richard Mille's radar by building a significant spend history with the brand and going through a crazy application and interview process where the brand sees if you're trustworthy enough to get one. Because of how in demand these pieces are and the insane things that Richard Mille makes you go through in order to get one, makes the RM 6702 one of the hardest pieces to acquire in the world. I mean, just imagine dropping $1 million on watches and then having to apply and be interviewed to get the one you really want. To all of us, that seems like an insane and ridiculous process. But in the world of super luxury watches, that seems to be standard. Because going off of that same idea, we need to talk about the most unique watch ever released by Audemars Piguet. And ever since the Royal Oak was released back in the 1970s, AP had been creating and innovating like no other brand. They've built a luxury watch empire on doing what the world saw as strange or unorthodox. Because of that, the younger population and pop culture fanatics have fallen in love with AP and everything they do, causing the prices and demand to increase like crazy. When they released the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar Travis Scott, this piece was the epitome of impossible to get. To start, the first pieces were given to Travis himself along with his friends and family. The watch features a medal unique to this piece and an open-worked face with the Perpetual Calendar complications written in a special font handwritten by Travis Scott. The brown ceramic paired with the brown calfskin bracelet gives the watch a look and feel that can be replicated by no other brand. Since it's such a complicated and in-demand watch, AP limited the watch to just 200 pieces worldwide, instantly making it the most in-demand watch in the AP catalog. This piece is so hard to acquire that there isn't even a waitlist for it, and AP decided to make it a selective, case-by-case process. This means that they are handpicking who they believe deserves one of these pieces, which makes the process even more strange. If we're going off purchase history alone, you would need at least $1 million in spend history to even have a shot, and that would have to include other really high-end pieces, not just a bunch of Royal Oaks or offshore models. And for this piece, it's most likely more about your relationship with the boutique you go to. This key detail is what makes it so complex. Most of the watches in this video will at least have a certain spend history threshold or roadmap to being allocated one, but this one is truly in a league of its own because it's also a very niche and specific watch. There aren't even any examples of people giving the testimony on how they got one, making the true process of acquiring a Travis Scott AP a mystery. We can only give our guesses and wonder what it truly takes to be offered one. However, a watch that we do know the status of is the most in-demand timepiece Patek Philippe has to offer. Launched in 1997, the Patek Philippe Aquanaut instantly became one of the most unique timepieces released. Featuring a textured dial and a rubber strap, the watch was extremely different from the usual Patek watch that you would normally see on the catalog. If I had to describe the reason for this watch being released, I would say to be the dynamic duo to the Nautilus, which was the best-selling Patek of all time. Sports watches were taking over the luxury scene, and Patek needed a way to stay relevant, which is exactly what made the Aquanaut perfect. Like most luxury timepieces, this watch saw a long time period of being accessible and available for anyone looking to purchase until social media came along. It was around 2018 when the Aquanaut started to really become a high demand piece, and since Patek does not use the Rolex waitlist system or anything like it, an allocation for an Aquanaut almost always meant a spend history was required. Because of the natural backup created, and then the pandemic hitting, the Aquanaut spiked in demand, and this is now going for triple the MSRP price on the secondary market. Nowadays, the Aquanaut is virtually unattainable, and there is no waitlist and no set spend history threshold known to man. The general consensus is that it could take years of spend history and relationship building to even be considered for one. At the moment, there have been many interactions between salespeople and potential customers in which Patek says that there is no realistic spend history and it's a long and complicated process to get one. This is probably because of the secondary market value, where Patek doesn't want just anyone getting their hands on one, with the fear that they'll just sell it for a quick and insane profit. This situation is uniform with the precious metal and steel models, but it's common knowledge that the steel version is harder to get and goes for more in the secondary market. Whether it's blue, black, orange, or green, the Aquanaut is easily one of the hardest watches to get your hands on in the world. Going off this insane concept for luxury watch brands using sports watches to build demand, we have one of the easier ones to acquire, the Vacheron Constantin Overseas. By now, you can probably tell a certain common denominator and theme when it comes to the hardest watches to acquire. And that theme is that they're all ultra luxury sports watches. In fact, there are almost no dress watches that are in this realm of the hardest to acquire. So continuing with this concept, we have the Vacheron Constantin Overseas, specifically the stainless steel version. Because of the decent pricing the stainless steel models command, they are oftentimes in more demand because they simply have a larger market of eligible buyers. Similar to the Aquanaut, the Overseas started to gain a lot of traction a couple years before the pandemic, and then the waitlist and demand just exploded during the lockdown. Vacheron is known for their stunning deep blue dials, and when the masses discovered the Overseas model with this insane dial, the hype skyrocketed. As of right now, you would have had to wait at least 2 to 4 years for one, unless you have an insane spend history. This piece certainly does not command the same process and demand as some of the other models we've discussed, but that doesn't mean that this piece is easy to obtain by any means. The bare minimum figure to even be considered for a steel blue dial overseas is over 350k in previous Vacheron purchases, making the journey a long and expensive wait. To go along with this, Vacheron boutiques are by appointment only, very different than the policy of Patek and AP, and they have an even more complicated relationship building process. This includes staying loyal to only one boutique, attending events, consistently stopping into the store, and long-term engagement, which will ultimately decide what your allocations look like. Overall, the game is harder and more niche than the other ones, making the overseas journey much more different than the rest. The market for a Vacheron is made up typically of collectors who already have insane collections and are very deep into the hobby of luxury watches. This adds more depth and competition if you're just getting started, because you'd be going up against customers who have already proven they can be trusted with watches that go for triple the retail price on the secondary market. It's safe to say that a lot has changed since the pandemic, and buying your favorite watch is not what it used to be whatsoever. I hope you enjoyed this video and this new sort of style to my content. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe and comment which watch you would want the most. With that being said, I'll see you on the other side.